How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Beis, Daf 72 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends. Today we're talking about more stuff. All right, and then we're finally going to get to the Mishnah that we were kind of really working with at the beginning of the parak, which was Pesika ala Peres, the forward contracts on the fruits. So that this is the actual Mishnah that discusses it on Daf Ayin Beis. Let's jump in. We're going to start on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Tana Rabbanan the rabbis taught Yisrael shalava mos min anochri beribis v'zok von olav b'milve v'nisgayer. You hear this? You have a yid. Yisrael shalava mos min anochri beribis. So if you have a yid who borrowed money from a Nochri with ribis, with interest, which is allowed, right? Between a Yisrael and a Nochri, ribis is allowed. V'zok von olav b'milva, but then they made it into a loan. Right? I guess that there was a certain amount of interest that was due, and they said, instead of kind of viewing this as a loan with interest, let's just say, I lent you $100. Now at this point you owe me $120. Let's just write a document for $120 and we'll call it a day. So so if they kind of wrote this loan document for $120 before the Nochri loaner converted to become a Jew, which means by the time that the Nochri loaner became a Yid loaner, so the loan with ribis had already been converted to a flat rate loan. So goves hakeren v'goves haribis, so he can collect the entire subsequent loan, $120. But if at the time of the conversion it was still a loan plus interest loan, so then the now Yid loaner cannot collect the interest, only the principal. Goves hakeren ve'eno goves haribis, he can only collect the principal, not the interest. V'chein Nochri shalova mos misrael. Similarly, a Nochri who borrowed money from a Yid, biribis, with ribis, which of course is allowed, right? A Nochri can borrow money from a Yid with interest, and then they make it into a sort of fixed rate loan with no interest. V'nisgayer, and then he converts to Judaism. So if it was already made into a loan, a fixed rate loan, prior to the conversion, so then the Yid can collect the keren and the ribis. But if they only restructured it as a fixed rate loan after the Nochri became a Yid, well then goves hakeren ve'eno goves haribis, you can only the Yid would only be able to collect the principal, not the interest. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi Nochri shalava mos mi Yisrael beribis. Says Rabbi Yossi that if a Nochri borrows money from a Yid with ribis, bein kach uvein kach gove es hakeren v'gove es haribis, regardless of whether the interest loan was made into a fixed rate loan prior to the conversion or after the conversion, it makes no difference. He would still have to pay the interest. How come? On my Ravit, says Rav Amar Rav Chizda Amar Rav Huna, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi, says the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rav, says Rav, my time with Rabbi Yossi, what's pshat with Rabbi Yossi? So nobody should suspect that maybe he only converted to Judaism to get out of paying interest. Maybe the interest was quite a lot, and he figured, oh boy, I'm in trouble, right? I'm in trouble. That there's a Yid who I owe a lot of money in interest payments to. You know what? I'm just going to convert to Judaism, become a Jew, and then I won't have to pay any interest, and it'll save my life. So so that people, which people? Let me just take. I think I have one sip of coffee left. I'll take a final sip of coffee, and then I'll tell you who the people are. the Yentis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon at their weekly meeting on the grass, where they share with each other this week's haul of intelligence, along with their low-fat mandel bread and Diet Coke. And what were we talking about again? They're going to talk about the proselyte, and how they think from their information that he may have only converted to Judaism because he has a big debt with a lot of interest to Yankel the Yid, and he only converted to Judaism in order to avoid paying interest. Do not allow your daughters to marry him. That is the that is the advice of the Yentis Intelligence Services. All right. Where are we? The rabbis taught a document that has so there's a document with ribis. Obviously, it's not okay. So if Shimon lends money to Reuven with interest, and there's a document that says that Reuven owes Shimon interest, well then, so we fine Shimon, and guess what? He can't collect anything. He wanted to loan his money with interest. Well, guess what? He won't even get back his principal. Divrei Meir, that's Reb Meir's opinion. The Chacham say, whereas the Chacham say, no, he can still collect the principal amount. He obviously can't collect the interest, but he doesn't forfeit, he doesn't lose the principal amount. But Maikim, if we get what's the machlokes between Reb Meir and the Chachamim, Reb Meir sover konsin netera mishum isura, Rabbanan tzavei loy konsin netera mishum isura. That Reb Meir says that we fine him and say that he can't even get paid back for his principal on account of the sin that he's doing, the terrible sin that he's doing. We've seen all sorts of things. He's chayiv for 2 lavin, he's chayiv for an essay and a leisaise, he's chayiv for all sorts of terrible things for lending with interest. And says Reb Meir, we also fine him. He can't even recoup the principal. He's in big trouble. Rabbanan Tzaveh was the rabbi told lo kadsinon heter mishum isur. We don't fine the heter on account of the isur. And yeah, sure, obviously he can't chaparan the interest, but he can nonetheless recoup the principal amount. Tanan Osam, we learned over there. Shtarei chov amukdomin psulin v'amuchorin ksherin. Right? What was it? Kosav. What was it? Kosav lahavos benisin ve'eno lava ad tishrei. Was that the lashon? Wait, what was this? One second. I think maybe that's what it was. Does it say? Kosa. No, come on, where is it? Was that what it's called? Kosav lavos benisim ve'enu lava ela ad tishrei? Something like that? Wow. Oh my gosh. I don't know. But that was like a whole Indian in like the first parak, I think. Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Kosav lilvos benisim ve'lelova ad tishrei. Not bad, alright. Remember that? That was exciting. Daf Yud Beis of Masechta BavaMetzia. That was 60 days ago. If my brain still serves me, 72 minus 12 is 60. 60 days ago. 2 months ago. We learned about Kosav Lilvos Benisin Velo Lova Ela Ad Tishrei. Wow. That was awesome times. BavaMetzia has been amazing, right? Alright. Where are we? So let's go back in the Gemara. So Tanan Osam. Shtari Chova Mukdamin. So if you have a document that's early, meaning, right, so for example, the document says that the loan took place in Nisan, but the fact of the matter is it really took place 6 months later in Tishrei. Now the issue with such a document, as we know from 60 days ago, is that Shimon, the lender, will now go to Levi, who purchased Reuven's property between Nisan and Tishrei, and Shimon's going to come. He's going to whip out his loan, his document, and he's going to go to Levi and say, look, you see, I lent money to Ruvain in Nisan. You only purchased the field in, what's after Nisan? Nisan Iyar. We're in Nisan now. Oh, Iyar is coming up. When's Iyar? Probably soon. When's Pesach? Pesach's the 15th of Nisan. So it just ended, so it's the 22nd of Nisan. So when did it end? Monday, Tuesday, something. So next Tuesday's, next week's Rosh Chodesh. Probably, Mustama. Then it's already Iyar. Iyar, wow. And then Sivan, and then, wow. Where are we? So anyway, so Shimon is gonna improperly take away Levi's field from him. So therefore, so that's a problem. So Shtarei Chova Mukdamin, so a document that is early, that the date on it is earlier than the actual loan that it writes, that it testified, that it attests to. Psulin, so those documents are possible, they're problematic. But a document that says that the loan happened later than it actually happened, well then that's ksherid. I mean, it's disadvantageous for Shimon, the lender, because he won't actually be able to collect from Nechasim Shubadim, except from properties that were sold after a later date. But it's nonetheless kosher. Mukdam and my psulin. How come a shtar mukdam? So what's the problem with kosav lovos benisin v'lo lova ele betishrei? Nihid lo gavu mizman rishin nigmu mizman sheni. Okay, granted, Shimon can't collect from Nisan, but let him at least collect from Tishrei. Reb Shimon ben Lakish b'machlokish shnuyev Reb Meir hi. So Rish Lakish wants to say that it's take. This is the opinion of Reb Meir. That Reb Meir says, Konsinon Karen Mishum, Konsinon Heter Mishum Isur. That even though, he could technically collect from Tishrei, but we penalize him, and because he has an improper shtar, he can't collect at all, even after Tishrei. I hope that's what I said. He can't even collect after Tishrei. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, afilu teimu rabban, you can even say that it's like the rabbis who say that you can collect the principal, but gezer shema yigbe mizman rishon. Still, I mean, basically, if Shimon could be allowed to use this document, then he's basically on the honor system, that he's not going to be collecting from Nisan, he's only going to collect from Tishrei. That's risky business, the honor system. The honor system isn't always honored, and therefore, you can't use such a document. Gavra de mashkin le pardesa lechavri ochla tlos shnei omar le im zabnis loniali mutav v'iloi kavishna la lishtar mashkanta v'amina lekuchi biyodi. You hear the son of a gun? Shimon lends $1,000 to Ruvain. Ruvain gives Shimon a mashkanta, gives him a property as a collateral, a mortgage, and Shimon is then allowed to chaparan. He's allowed to make use of the field. So you know what Shimon does? That son of a gun. So the mortgage was for 10 years. Okay, and so Shimon's for 10 years. After 3 years, which is enough time for a chazakeh to establish the field as his own, after 3 years, Shimon, the son of a gun, goes to Ruvain. He says, all right, Ruvain. What was I say before? All right, Ruvain. I don't know what I was thinking before. But Ibetzim says, Ruvain, checkmate. That's what I was thinking before. Checkmate. That's what he says. After 3 years, Shimon goes to Ruvain. He says, checkmate. And he gives him an offer he can't refuse. He says, either you sell me the field and I'll buy it from you, or else I'm going to hide the shtar mashkanta and I'm just going to walk around town telling everybody that the field is mine, and you'll just simply lose your field, because after all, I have a chazaka. I've been using the field for 3 years. Nobody's seen you on the field for 3 years. They've only seen me on the field. Everyone knows it's my field now. So he basically gives Ruvain now an offer he can't refuse. He says, either you let me buy the field from you for money, and if you don't agree to play ball, I'm just going to tell everybody that it's mine. I have a chazaka, and it'll be mine. Son of a gun. So again, Augav the Mashkin le Pardes l'Chavre. So Shimon had lent $1,000 to Reuven. Reuven made his field as a mashkanto. Ochlet shnei. Shimon then, took advantage of the field for 3 years. Omar le, and after 3 years, he says to Reuven, checkmate. Imizabnis la niali mutov. If you're willing to sell me the field, okay, that's best case scenario. I'll pay you for it, and at least you can make some money on it. But v'ilo, if you're not willing to play ball, kavishnulo l'shtar mashkanto. I'm just going to hide the, I'm going to get rid of the mashkant, the document of the mashkanta v'amino, and I'm going to tell the people likucha ibiyadi, it's mine, and nobody will be able to contest that because after all, I have a chazaka of 3 years on it. But Reuven was not going to allow himself to be taken advantage of like that. So you know what Reuven does? Also, kamaknai live no kohen. Simple. He gave his field as a gift to his son. He gave the field as a gift to his son. And then V'others, Abnoniele. And then he says, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, Shimon, I'll sell it to you. And he writes up a document, he gives it to Shimon. Now Shimon goes around town, saying, you see, Reuven sold me his field. So he's not relying on the chazaka anymore. He's saying, look, he's showing the document. He says, Reuven sold his field to me. Here's the document to prove it. And then you know what Reuven does? He says, actually, the field isn't yours because I had already given it as a gift to my son and he has witnesses. And now Shimon's stuck. He can't rely on the chazaka anymore because he's already telling people that he bought it and that and he's got this document. The problem is the document is invalid because at the time that Reuven purportedly sold him the field, he had already given it as a gift to his son and it wasn't his anymore. So you know what Reuven says to Shimon? Checkmate. Alright, that's good. Alright, where are we? So 4 lines from the bottom towards the end of the line. Ozal kamaknai liv no kohen. So Reuven goes and he gives the field to his son, his minor son, as a gift. V'others nabnanile, and only subsequently did he sell the field, quote unquote, sell the field to Shimon. Zabine vade leave zabine. Okay, obviously it's not a good sale to Shimon because it was already given as a gift to his son. Zuze, but what about the payment? Because what does Shimon have? Shimon does have a document, and the document says in it that Reuven sold him the field, and it says that he sold it to him ba'achrayus, meaning if anything comes up, anything unexpected comes up, like a creditor or somebody's going to come and take away the field from Shimon, he'll be able to collect from Reuven's nechasim mishubadim. So sure enough, what happens? It turns out that Reuven sold Shimon a field when he had already given it as a gift to his son. So Shimon now takes his document. He says, okay, well, I want to collect from nechasim mishubadim. I'm going to go and I'm going to collect from other properties that you may have sold subsequently, and I'm going to take it from them. So Zuze, so with regard to the financial claim that Shimon has on account of the sale, the fictitious sale, I guess you can call, Kimilva b'shtardam, do we view it as a loan with a document v'govim nechasim mishubadim, it'll be aid that will entitle him to collect from nechasim mishubadim? Or dilma kimilva apedamu ve'enu govim nechasim mishubadim. Or maybe it's considered like a verbal document which would not enable him to, which would not allow him to collect from nechasim mishubadim. So Shimon's got this document. Can he now collect from nechasim mishubadim or not? Amar Abai says Abai v'lavhanu de Abasi d'Amar Basi. So it says Abai, would this not be what Rabasi said? Moed b'shtar sheksavoi eno sarich l'kaimo v'gov nechasim mishubadim. So wouldn't this be an example of moed b'shtar sheksavo? That, what does that mean? It means that if a different Shimon lends $1,000 to a different Reuven, and then comes time to pay, and Shimon and within. How about this? All right. We already have a Reuven and a Shimon, Levi and Yehuda. Yehuda lends $1,000 to Levi, and there's a document, a loan document. Of course, comes time to pay it back. Yehuda takes out his loan document, and Levi says, "Yep, I wrote that." So Mod B'Shtashik Savo, by Levi admitting, yeah, that's an accurate, that's a real document. Yeah, I owe Shimon $1,000. So I owe Yehuda $1,000. So you don't need to bring witnesses to prove that it's a real document. Levi already admitted it's a real document. It's a real document. So shouldn't this be an example? Now, back in our case with Reuven and Shimon, so Reuven's admitting that he wrote the document. The thing is that the document, he had already given the land to his son. So Reuven admits that it's a real document, though. So therefore, and you can collect from nechas mishubadim. So according to Abaye, certainly Shimon can collect from Reuven's nechas mishubadim, from the nechas mishubadim. Amalei Rave, but Rav responds to Abaye, no way, no how. Mi dami is the situation over here with Reuven and Shimon when Shimon's trying to make Reuven an offer he can't refuse. Are you serious? You say that that's similar to Levi and Yehuda with a regular old loan? Again, Amalei Rave, midami also nitali kasev. By Levi and Yehuda, that was a regular loan. Obviously, that document had every right to be written. Yehuda has every right to collect with it. Levi admits that it's an accurate document. Of course, we go based on what, so meaning it makes sense to say, yeah, if Levi admits that it's accurate, we believe him. But achalo nitali kasev. This is a document that never should have been written in the first place. It's only because Shimon's an oisvarf. It's only because Shimon's a son of a gun. It's only because Shimon is threatening Reuven and giving him an offer he can't refuse, and saying checkmate, that Reuven is pulling shtick and giving his field as a gift to his son in order to avoid, basically in order to catch Shimon in his own game. Meaning Reuven is giving the field to his son in order to catch Shimon in his own game. But this is really a document that should in the ideal world that we all want to live in, this document should have never been written. This sale document to some oisvarf. So therefore, Rava says, this document should have never been written in the first place. Certainly, Shimon cannot use it to collect from nechas mishubadim. So again, so Amalei Rava says to Abaye, midami, are these cases similar? Also, nitan li kasev. By Levi and Yehuda with their loan, of course that document should have been written. Hachalo nitan li kasev. The Shimon's document with Reuven should have never been written in the first place, because Shimon's just it's only written in order to catch Shimon in his own game, but that game never should have been played. Yosef Mereimar v'kamer laha shmaita. So Mereimar was sitting and he was studying this sugya. He was saying over the sugya with Rava about how there was a document should never have been written, therefore it's irrelevant. Amalei Ravina leMereimer. Ravina says to Mereimer, is that really a thing? Is lo nitan li kasev really a thing that we could apply in halacha? Elahada Amar Rabbi Yechanan, that which Rabbi Yechanan had said earlier, when it came to Kasav Lilvos Benisin V'Leilava Ad Tishrei. In that scenario, Rabbi Yechanan said you can't use the document because we're concerned that maybe the honor system is going to fail us and he's going to collect from Nisan. But why don't we just say that document should have never been written? You shouldn't be writing a document based about a loan that didn't actually take place and putting in a date that is not the real date. That document should never have been written. So if that's a thing that the document should never have been written, this should be an example of a document that should have never been written. Why didn't Rabbi Yochanan mention that? So Amalei, where am I? So Amalei Ravina where am I? So Mereimer was sitting and he was saying that. So Amalei Ravina the Mereimer. Okay. So I guess Mereimer says to Ravina, Avonitan likosav izman sheni. But yeah, there's still a difference. Because by Kosav Lovos benisim v'lova elad tishrei, well, sure, it shouldn't have been written in Nisan, that's true. But it should have been written at the right time. But, this is be'etzem, this is fundamentally a document that should have been written, granted at the right time, but it was recording a real loan that took place, and therefore fundamentally it is a document that should have been written. But over here, by Shimon the Oisvarf, Lo nitan li kasev klal, it should never have been written. Shimon should have never exploited the mashkanta in that way, and therefore this is a document that bichlal should never exist, and therefore that's why we could apply lo nitan li kasev. Elo haditani. What about the following brayso? Chav, there's so geshmak. We've of course seen more than half of Shas, so this is a sugya. This is a Gemara that a year ago when we saw it for the first time. We were running around like chickens without head in order to figure out what it means. This is already the third time we've seen it already. We can just kind of learn it just like another day. Another day, another complicated Gemara. We've seen it all. No, we haven't. We got another 3 years left. And then we'll see it all. And then we will have seen it all. We're getting there, Chaver. We're getting there. One Masechta at a time. We're on Daf Ayin Beis, Masechta BavaMetzia. Chaver, that's impossible stuff. We're doing the impossible. Elohaditani, that was learning in the Brisa, the Shvach Kakos, Ketzad. That, what Shvach Kakos? Because we were listing a bunch of things that you cannot collect from Nechosim Mishubadim, you can only collect them from Nechosim B'nei Chorin. So, Haresha Gozal Sodom Mechaveru, if, who's doing what? I think we had said, Ruvain stole a field from Shimon and sold it to Levi. I think that was the scenario that we were working with. So Haresha Gozal Sodom Mechaveru, Ruvain stole a field from Shimon, Umachar La'acher, and sells it to Levi. Ruvain steals a field from Shimon, and he sells it to Levi. V'ishbicha, and Levi is working the field, improving it, making it better, and then, sure enough, Shimon comes and says, Levi, sorry, that's my field, Ruvain stole it from me. So now Levi goes over to Ruvain, and he says, Ruvain, you sold me a stolen field. So he's entitled to get paid back the principal from Nechasim Mishubadim, but any improvements that he had to the field, any improvements that that Levi made to the field with fertilizers and working it, whatever it is, that can only be collected from Nechasim B'nei Chorin. Okay, so I wish also Sodom Chaver Machul La'acher V'Shbicha, and it improved in value. V'arei he yotzis mitachas yado, and Shimon takes it away from Levi. K'shugova, when Levi goes to Reuven to collect from Nechasim Mishubadim, Gova es haKeren min Nechasim Mishubadim, the principal can be collected from Nechasim Mishubadim. V'Shevach Gov min Nechasim B'nei Chorin, but the improvement that Levi had made to the field can only be collected from Nechasim B'nei Chorin. But Neima lo nitan likasav. Why don't we say over there as well? That was a document documenting the sale of a stolen field. The field should have never been stolen, should have never been sold, and no document should have ever been written. So why don't we say lo nitan likasav? Well, it's not necessarily a scenario of lo nitan likasav. When it comes over there, when Reuven stole the field from Shimon and sold it to Levi, we saw two explanations in the Gemara. When Reuven steals a field from Shimon and then sells it to Levi, he says, oh no, this is bad news. This is bad news. I'm in big trouble. Not only did I steal Shimon's field, I can't just give it back to him now. I already sold it to Levi. And he's getting caught up in his web of crime. So he wants to try to fix things. And he says, instead of, he says, it's a little bit too late to give back the field to Shimon, because I sold it already to Levi. So he tries to work backwards. He says, why don't I go to Shimon, explain to him what happened, and try to make it right with him. I'll pay him for it, whatever. Let's leave Levi out of this. I'll work it out with Shimon. So therefore, the point being that Ruvain gives this document to Levi, and it's not necessarily that and he's then going to go and work from the back end to try to make the document good, to try to work things out with Shimon so that the sale does actually become a good sale, because Ruvain works things out with Shimon, and the sale to Levi is valid. So therefore, this isn't fundamentally a document that should not have been written, sure, because nothing should have been stolen. But Reuven then goes and works from the back end to sort things out with Shimon in order to keep things okay with Levi and to try to contain the fire. So in that case, ultimately the document was okay, right? So again, over there, Reuven doesn't want to be known as the town thief, and therefore he's going to work things out on the back end with Shimon. Or he wants to kind of like keep his, I think this was to like keep his positive recommendation, his positive reputation. So therefore, Mephias Lamari is going to go and work things out on the back end with Shimon in order to, keep Levi oblivious to everything, and to keep that document umukum le, and he's going to establish, and Reuven's going to stand by his star that he has to Levi. But over here, fakir, the whole point of this document was a ploy to ultimately catch Shimon in his own game. He's not going to establish it and say, yeah, I stand by my document. No, he stands by the document only so far as it is for Shimon to not be able to exploit and take his field away from him. But so long as it served that purpose, he has no interest in being Mekayim that star and standing by it and letting Shimon collect from the Chas Meshubadim. No way, no how. Says the Mishnah, in poskin ala peiris ache yetze ashar yotza ashar poskin v'afal pishein loze yesh loze. So this Mishnah we've already been working with from the beginning of the Perek, right? That Reuven gives money to Shimon for wheat, and Shimon's going to deliver the wheat in a few months from now. We say that so long as there is an established market rate for wheat, so that's acceptable. And even if the wheat comes in a few months later, and the price of wheat has gone up, and for the amount of wheat that he bought, he's actually getting more value than he paid for, that's okay, since at the time that he paid the money, there was a market rate, and Shimon could have technically taken that money and bought wheat at that rate. He didn't. Instead, he waited for his own shipment, and the price went up. But we say that is not a problem of interest. So says the Mishnah again, Ein poskin ala peiris hachetze ashar. So we can't do these forward contracts for peiris until there's an established market rate. Yotzo ashar, once there's an established market rate, poskin, then we can have forward contracts. V'afalpi she'ein loze yesh loze, and even if Shimon doesn't have the wheat at that time, but he could theoretically buy it from somebody else at that time, so therefore it's acceptable. So that is one way in which Psik ala Peiris is acceptable, right? If there is an established market rate. There was another way that Psik ala Peiris was acceptable. That is, if Shimon already has the product in stock. He already has it. So now we're going to discuss what's considered already having it. So if Shimon was harvesting his field and it was already, there wasn't yet an established, it's very early in the season, there was not yet an established market rate. Posek imo ala godish, so once already has a pile of grain, well, it's considered like, he's got grain and he could already make a forward contract on it. Vala ovit, shelanovim, or if he has grapes, and the grapes are already in this container that he puts them in to ripen before they could be made into wine. Vala maitin shelzeisim, or a maitin for olives is basically the same thing as an ovit for anovim for grapes. Vala beitzim shel yotzer, or if a clay guy, a potter, already has balls of clay, so then already can make forward contracts for pots. Ve'al asid, and on lime mishashako bakivshon, once he puts it in the kiln or something. Ufosek imo ala zevel mikol yimos hashana, and all year long you can make forward contracts on fertilizer, on manure, because there's always considered to be a supply of that from people's animals. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ein poskin ala zevel elim ken oisalo zevel ba'ashba. Rabbi Yossi says no, you can only make a forward contract for manure if you actually have the manure. The Chacham say that it is mutter, even if he doesn't have the manure. We're going to, the Gemara is going to discuss this. Ufosik imo b'shara gavoya. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afal pishelo posak imo b'shara gavoya yochol lomar lo yochol lomar tein li koze o tein li esma osai. So, yeah, right, yeah, exactly. So if there's a psika ala Paris, right? So if Reuven gives Shimon money and to buy wheat, all right. So we of course said that if the wheat comes in and wheat went up in price, so Shimon needs to honor, right? I mean, Reuven is still entitled to that same measure. Let's say it was a core of wheat, I think was in the first Mishnah. So if he had bought a core of wheat in advance, and then the price of wheat went up, so he still gets that same core, even though he's getting more value than he paid for. What if it's fakert? What if the price of wheat went down? And now by Reuven accepting wheat, that same core of wheat, he's actually losing money because he had paid for that core of wheat when it was more expensive. Now he's getting that same amount, but it's actually worth less now. So it says the Mishnah, Ufosek imo b'shara gavoya. So gavoya in this case is referring to getting more stuff. So meaning if Reuven wants to get more stuff, that in the event that the price of wheat goes down, that he's still going to want to that he's going to want to now get more because he paid $100 for wheat for a core, but now $100 gets you more than a core, and he's going to want to get as much as $100 will get you now. Well, then he's going to have to stipulate that in advance. Milchatchila is going to have to say, look, if the price of wheat goes down, well, then I want you to, make up the difference. I want you to add wheat to my order to make up for the amount that I'm laying out. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't have to explicitly make this condition, make this stipulation. Yochol Omar tein li kozeh o tein li esma osai. And Rabbi Yehuda says that even if there isn't that stipulation is not explicitly stipulated, when the grain comes in, Reuven can still say to Shimon, I gave you $100 for a core. $100 now gets me 2 core. Either give me 2 core or give me back my $100, because ultimately Reuven never made a kinyan on it, right? Reuven never did a kinyan mashich on it. He gave money. We're going to get into this stuff in the Gemara. But anyways, so Rabbi Yehuda says that Reuven could say to him, look, either you give me more based on the current value of things, or give me back my money. Says the Gemara. Says Reb Asi in the name of Reb Yochanan that we do not make forward contracts based on the market rate. Reb Asi. Now says Reb Zera to Reb Asi, he's a shtickle confused, shtickle concerned. Says, wait, even like in the main big market where they have established prices, you can't have a forward contract based on those established big market prices? So Amar Lei, so Reb Asi responds to Reb Zera, Lo Amar Reb Yochanan ela b'shuk shalayos to lo kviye tarayu. That no, Reb Yochanan, when he says that we don't make forward contracts on fruit based on the market value, means the small town values, market rates, but the big established market rates, no, that you can go that is what you go based on when for forward contracts. Now our havamina, dam Reb Yochanan afilu kedurmas hazeh. Now the havamina that we had to say that Reb Yochanan would say that you cannot make forward contracts even based on the established big market rates. But if that's the case, based on our havamina, which is that we entertain the notion that perhaps Rabbi Yochanan says that you cannot have forward contracts not based on small market rates, not based on big market rates. Well then, how do you understand our Mishnah, which says that you can have forward contracts based on the market rate? Which market rate? So, well, that would be sort of the even more established rates, like at peak season when grain and produce is coming in by the boatload, and the storage houses, and like there's lots and lots of grain, then there is an established price that lasts for a while. That would be the market rate that Rabbi Yochanan that would have been referring to. If that's what he would. I mean, if you would say not the small town, not the big town, then what is it? It's sort of the peak season extended market rate. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, "Ein posken ala peiros ad sheyitzei ashar." Okay, you can only make a forward contract once there's an established market rate. Yotza ashar posken, and once there's an established market rate, we can have forward contracts. Afal pisha ein loza yesh loza, and even if Shimon, who you're contracting with, doesn't have grain, he can go to somebody else and buy that grain from there if he wants to. We saw this the other day. What if the older grain was better because it's more ready for making into flour. It's drier, you can make it into flour. New ripe grain is still moist, you can't make it into flour so good, apparently. So long as the new crop is cheaper than the older crop, because you can't make it into grain right away, into flour right away. So long as the new crop is still cheaper than the older crops. So right, the new crops were 4 measures for a zuz, whereas the old ones were only 3 measures per zuz. Ein poskin ad sheyetze ashar lechodesh v'leyoshin. So it would only be considered an established market rate at the once it is the same, once the new crop is already costing the same as the older crop because it's dried out, and it's at that point in the season, it would be considered established. The lekutis were leket shichacha and peah, the gleaners, the poor people that would collect from the fields, and that was probably, to begin with, it was probably shtickle sugbet, and also they would just kind of mix together whatever they could find. It wasn't the spitz. It wasn't the best stuff. So that was generally cheaper. But I guess at peak season, I guess the market, there was so much available in the market, there was so much abundance that even the regular produce would cost the same as the gleaned produce, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or at least in general. So long as the gleaner's grain was 4 measures per zuz, and everybody else's grain was 3 measures per zuz, ein poskin, then you cannot yet have future contracts. Ad sheyetze ashar deloka v'lamocher, until the price has been established for the gleaners as well as the regular merchants. Homer Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, posting the lekutis kishar lekutis. Well, if you're going to want to buy forward contracts on lekutis stuff, which is 4 measures per zuz, well, you could do that because it's already been that's been established, even if not for everybody else, but at least that is. Amalei Rava Rav Nachman says, Rava to Rav Nachman, Mashna locate the ilesle yaziv milokut chavre. So Rava says to Rav Nachman, so if you're saying that you can get a forward contract on lekutis stuff, because if he doesn't have it, he can borrow from a different lekutis, well then why can't you just have a forward contract for regular grain too? And if necessary, Shimon, the regular grain monger, will borrow from a lekutis. So Balabai's nami yazif milokut, let him borrow from a lekutis. Amarle, so Rav Nachman says, Balabai zila be milsa lemezif milokut. First of all, a Balabai Shimon is not gonna feel comfortable. He's not gonna feel dignified to go and borrow from a lekutis because he sells the spitz. Alternatively, alternatively, somebody who's buying from Shimon is expecting to get high quality stuff, not the stuff of the gleaners, which is a lower quality product. So therefore, it's not shy. It's not really an option for Shimon to be able to collect from the gleaners, to borrow from the gleaners. Amr of Sheshes is of Sheshes. Amr of Huna, the name of Huna. Ein loven al shai shebashuk. You can't borrow money based on the shai shebashuk. So meaning, if Shimon lends $1,000 to Ruvain can't say, and if I don't pay you back, I will give you grain equal to the current market value of grain. So now, in a certain sense, that is similar, or let's actually do it backwards, right? Let's do it the other way. Ruvain lends $1,000 to Shimon, and the deal is, if Shimon doesn't pay back Ruvain, so then Ruvain will collect wheat from Shimon at the current market rate. So, that basically doesn't seem very different from Ruvain giving Shimon $1,000 and saying, give me wheat in the future based on the current market rate, which we said is acceptable. And yet, Amr of Sheshes, Amr of Huna, Ein Loven al Shai Shebashuk, you can't do that. If it's a loan, so as sort of like a future contract to purchase, as a sale of wheat, that's okay. But as a loan to be paid back with wheat where it could potentially go up in value and you'll be getting paid back more than you paid, so then that would be more than you loaned, that would be a problem. Amr Rav Yosef bar Chama, the Rav Sheshes, V'amila Rav Yosef bar Abba Rav Sheshes, Amr Rav Huna Achi, did Rav Huna really say that it's not allowed? But we asked Rav Huna, Hani b'nei Beirav, the students, the Yazve b'Tishrei Ufari b'Teves, that they borrow money in Tishrei, based on the current market rate of produce in Tishrei, and then they pay back in Nisan, the same amount, right? The same amount based on the pricing when they borrowed in Tishrei. So Shario also, we asked him, is that allowed or not? Amrlu, he said to them, Hachite behine, vachite beshile. Yeah, it's allowed, because technically when these students got the money, they could have immediately gone to Shile and Hine, these market towns, and they could have bought produce then and given it and paid it back with that produce then. So because they could have done that, so basically there was the shar, right? There was the market rate that they could have gone on at the time, so therefore it's acceptable. So Rav Huna, where am I? So Rav Huna ein lovin. So the answer is that, look, initially Rav Huna thought that you can't do this. You can't borrow money in order to be repaid based on an amount of produce based on the current market rate. But once he heard of Shmuel Bar Chia, that you can borrow money to pay back produce based on the current market rate, Iu nami lovin. Amar iu nami lovin. So then Rav Huna said, okay, well, I guess you can do that and it's acceptable. Alright, Cheve, that was Daf Ein Beis of Masechta BavaMetzia. We talked about a lot of interesting kind of stuff today. We talked about the machlokes between Reb Meir and the Chachamim about Kansinan Atera Atu Isura. Reb Meir says Kansinan Atera Atu Isura. The Chachamim say no. We got into an interesting scenario with an extortionist, an extorter, extorting money and getting caught up in his own game. And Machlokas Abaye, who sort of pulled out the concept of Mod B'Shtashik Savo in Tzarech L'Kama V'Govim N'Chos M'Shubadim, whereas Rava said no, this is not a document that should have ever been written, and it's not acceptable, it's not admissible. Then we got into the sugya that really we've been discussing since the beginning of the parak, Shara Yotze and Psika Ala Peris, forward contracts for later acceptance of grain based on the current market rates or based on if you already have it. So a lot of interesting stuff in Daf Ayin Beis of Masechta BavaMetzia. Peace out.